On March 6, 1944, about 23,000 feet above Germany, a B-17 flying fortress named Hell's Fury pushed deeper into hostile airspace. Snow-white contrails stretched across the sky. Below them, the war machine of Nazi Germany waited. In the tail gunner seat sat Staff Sergeant Michael Mad Mike Donovan, a man whose reputation inside the 8th Air Force could be summed up in a single word: aggression. Through the narrow glass of his turret, he watched 12 Messerschmitt Bf-109s forming up in the distance. Their movement was familiar. Their intent was not a mystery. They were building for a coordinated strike. According to standard procedure, Donovan should have stayed planted in the station, waited for the German fighters to close the distance, and then fired short, controlled defensive bursts. Training told him to conserve ammunition. Common sense said stay alive. Michael Donovan didn't follow any of those rules. In the next 4 minutes, 12 German fighters crashed toward the earth. Not a single American crewman aboard Hell's Fury suffered so much as a scratch. And on that day, every gunner in the 8th Air Force learned something new about air combat. Aggression wasn't a flaw. It was a weapon. This is a story of how one tail gunner's reckless instinct changed bomber doctrine, turned desperation into strategy, and transformed the most dangerous seat on a flying fortress into the deadliest one. Michael Donovan grew up in South Boston, where fights were won not by patience, but by striking first. His father worked the docks. His older brother fought in the Golden Gloves. Mike learned early that hesitation gets you hurt and action keeps you breathing. By 17, he'd been in 32 street fights and lost only 4. Those losses stuck with him. He swore he'd never be caught waiting again. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, Donovan enlisted in the Army Air Forces. They tried to place him in ground crew. He refused. He wanted gunnery school. Instructors thought he was a risk. Too bold. Too willing to pop his head out for a clearer shot. Their warnings bounced right off him. His reply became a legend around the training range. Dead gunners don't shoot back. Live ones do. He didn't graduate high for accuracy. He graduated high for speed. Donovan could track and acquire targets faster than almost anyone they trained. And his secret wasn't complicated. He never waited for enemy fighters to enter his zone. He hunted them before they got there. By March 1944, Donovan received orders assigning him to the 390th Bombardment Group at Framlingham, England. Hell's Fury already carried a tough reputation. 3 missions in, and the bomber had barely escaped 2 serious fighter ambushes. Its previous tail gunner, Sergeant Eddie Morrison, barely survived and quickly requested a transfer. He left with a warning. That tail position is cursed. Next man is a dead man. Donovan stepped up the moment he heard. The pilot, Captain James Whitmore, pulled him aside for a personal interview. You know the statistics? Whitmore asked. Tail gunners have the highest casualty rate in the Air Force. 38% won't finish their tour. That means 62% do, Donovan replied. I'll take those odds. And why the tail position? The captain asked. Donovan didn't hesitate. Because I don't wait for them to shoot me. I shoot first. Whitmore stared at him, then cracked a tired smile. You're insane. Welcome aboard. Donovan flew his first mission on March 2nd. The target was a ball-bearing factory at Schweinfurt. He downed 1 Bf-109 and damaged 2 more. But the kill count wasn't what got the crew talking. It was the way he fought. Instead of waiting for enemy fighters to close the distance, he fired warning bursts at them while they were still forming up, at extreme range, against every rule in the book. To Donovan, it wasn't wasteful. It was insurance. 20 rounds now could stop a coordinated attack later. 20 rounds could save 10,000 pounds of bomber and 9 crewmen. 2 days later, on March 4th, Donovan pushes experiments further. When German fighters dived in from 6 o'clock high, he didn't aim for the lead aircraft. He aimed for the wingman, the one following predictable flight patterns, the one not expecting fire yet. The wingman exploded. The lead fighter, suddenly without support, panicked and broke off. The entire German formation unraveled. His crew chief, Frank Murphy, inspected the ammo belts after landing. You burned through 1,600 rounds, he said. Worth it, Donovan answered. We came home. But Donovan wasn't just improvising. He was building something new, studying German tactics at night. He realized the Luftwaffe always held the initiative. American gunners reacted. German pilots dictated the terms of every engagement. Donovan wanted to flip the script. What if the tail gunner forced the enemy to respond? What if defensive fire became offensive pressure? He planned to find out. The chance came on March 6. The target was the aircraft plant at Augsburg. Nearly 800 B-17s would be in the air. Intelligence warned that German fighters would swarm the formations. Losses were expected to be severe. Before takeoff, Whitmore briefed the crew. This one's going to be rough. Stay sharp. Stay alive. Donovan raised his hand. Sir, permission to use aggressive fire. I want to hit them before they start their attack runs. That will burn your ammo, Whitmore warned. Or it'll stop the attack before it starts, Donovan said. Sir, we've been playing defense for 2 years, and tail gunners are dying at 38%. Maybe it's time we try something else. Whitmore looked around the room, then gave him a single nod. You get one mission. If this goes badly, you're off the guns. Clear. Donovan nodded. Clear, sir. Hell's Fury lifted off at 0647 hours. Hell's Fury joined the formation over East Anglia, climbed through a blanket of morning haze, and settled into its cruising altitude. They crossed the English Channel and entered German airspace at 0824. Everything felt routine, mechanical, predictable, until 0919. Fighters, 6 o'clock high, 12 bandits. Donovan snapped his turret around. Through the glass bubble, he spotted 12 Bf-109s about 2,000 yards back, spreading into attack formation. Standard doctrine told him to wait. Let them come. Aim for the lead fighter once they committed. Donovan ignored every rule in the book. He opened fire at 2,000 yards, far beyond reliable hit range. His tracers arced across the empty sky and burst harmlessly in the distance. Not one round came close. But that wasn't the point. The effect was instant. The German formation shattered like a flock of spook birds. The lead fighter jerked right. 2 wingmen hesitated. Their attack pattern collapsed before it even began. Donovan, cease fire, Whitmore said over the intercom. You're wasting ammunition. Negative, sir. Donovan answered calmly. Just watch. The Germans regrouped, but now they approached differently. No confident dives. No aggressive angles. They tested the range. They probed. The initiative had shifted, and every pilot in the sky knew it. Donovan tracked the new lead fighter. When it drifted to 1,500 yards, he fired again. Short bursts, not aiming to kill, aiming to scare. And it worked. The formation broke for a second time, but one fighter didn't flinch. The wingman on the left held his line. Donovan recognized the type instantly. A veteran. Someone who wouldn't be bullied by warning shots. This one needed to be destroyed. He let the Bf-109 come closer. 1,400 yards. 1,200. 1,100. Most gunners opened up here. Donovan didn't. He waited until the fighter filled his entire sight picture at 1,000 yards. Then he unleashed everything. A 3-second sustained barrage. 200 rounds pouring from the twin .50s in a solid, unbroken stream of fire. The German pilot tried to break away, but flew straight into the storm. The engine detonated. The fighter ripped apart and spun downward in burning fragments. Good kill, the radio operator said. Donovan didn't respond. He was already tracking the next target. The remaining 11 fighters regrouped. This time, they were cautious, aware that Hell's Fury's tail gun wasn't a weak spot. It was a trap. They adjusted their tactics, splitting into 2 groups. 6 at direct 6 o'clock, 5 coming in from 7 o'clock. Donovan didn't try to cover both. Waist gunners, 7 o'clock is yours, he called out. I'm holding 6. Sergeants Tommy Price and Carl Johnson answered with steady bursts from their waist guns. Donovan focused completely on the 6 fighters lining up behind the bomber. He locked onto the lead aircraft and fired. Direct hit. The fighter blew apart. The formation faltered. Donovan seized a moment. shifted to the next lead fighter, and fired again. Another explosion. In less than 30 seconds, 3 German fighters were spiraling toward the trees below. The remaining 9 didn't regroup. They ran, a full retreat. From a single tail gun position, Donovan checked his ammo belts. He'd fired 1,200 rounds. He had 800 left, enough for a few more encounters, but not enough for a long fight, and the mission was still far from over. 15 minutes passed. Then they came again. 18 fighters, a full staffel. They'd heard what happened to the first group, and they weren't making the same mistakes. They attacked from every angle, 6, 7, 5 for a clock, for separate threat directions at once. Their goal was simple: overwhelm the bombers' defenses. Standard procedure was to split attention, spread the fire, and hope the formation behind you helped fill in the gaps. Donovan didn't follow standard procedure. He chose pure focus violence. He ignored the fighters approaching from 4 and 5 o'clock, left them for the waist and ball gunners. He locked everything onto the direct 6 o'clock attackers. 6 BF-109s diving straight toward him. He opened fire at 1,200 yards, the maximum effective range of his guns. The closure rate between fighter and bomber was 400 knots. That gave him roughly 7 seconds. He used every one of them. He walked his tracers directly toward the path of the lead fighter. The German couldn't break formation without ruining the attack. He held steady. Fatal mistake. At 800 yards, Donovan's rounds tore through the canopy. The aircraft rolled upside down and fell apart. 5 left. 400 yards to impact. 3 seconds. Donovan didn't have time to track properly. He fired at where the next fighter would be in 2 seconds, not where it was now. The BF-109 flew directly into the stream of bullets. The engine cowling tore open. The fighter turned into a fireball. The last 3 broke formation immediately and fled. "Holy hell!" Whitmore said over the intercom. Donovan just splashed 2 more in 3 seconds. Donovan didn't celebrate. He dropped in his final ammunition belt. 400 rounds left, and they were only halfway to Augsburg. The surviving German fighters held back. 12 remained, staying just outside gun range, following formation like wolves waiting for reinforcements. Whitmore saw the pattern right away. They're calling for backup. We're about to get hit with the whole sky. He was right. 10 minutes later, radar picked up new contacts. 36 more fighters, 3 full staff on the BF-109s and FW-190s, joined with the 12 already shadowing them. Hell's Fury now faced 48 enemy fighters, and the bomber had drifted out of formation during the earlier fight. They were alone. The nearest friendly bomber was 3 miles away. No P-51 escorts anywhere in reach. Hell's Fury was completely alone. Donovan checked his belts. 380 rounds left. 48 fighters closing in. The math didn't work, unless he changed the math. "Captain," Donovan said over the intercom, "request permission to try something." Whitmore hesitated. What exactly? Attack. Silence filled the aircraft. Then Whitmore's voice came back, steady and controlled. "Explain." "Those fighters are forming up for a coordinated strike," Donovan said. "Give them 2 minutes, and they'll hit us from every angle at once. We can't survive that. But while they're still organizing, they're vulnerable. If I hit them now, I can scatter them before they tighten up. You'll burn through every round you have in 30 seconds. Then I'll make those 30 seconds count. Sir, defensive fire doesn't work when you're outnumbered 20-1. Our only chance is to hit them before they're ready to hit us." Whitmore paused for 3 long seconds, then made his call. "Do it. And if you get us killed, I'm writing your family a very unfriendly letter." Donovan didn't waste a breath on a reply. The German fighters were 2,000 yards out. Their formation looked perfect. Lead elements setting attack angles. The second wave taking support positions. Everyone aligning for a synchronized kill shot. Perfect formation. Perfect vulnerability. Donovan opened fire. Not bursts. Not warning shots. A full, sustained 8-second barrage. 200 rounds poured straight into the heart of the German formation. He wasn't aiming for individual planes. He aimed at the space that kept the formation together, the invisible lines that held their discipline. The effect was instant and violent. Tracers tore through the formation center. One BF-109 burst into flames and spiraled down. Two others collided trying to avoid the incoming fire. Caution vanished. Discipline evaporated. 48 fighters broke apart like shrapnel. No coordinated attack. No timing. No unified plan. Just chaos. Whitmore's voice cracked through the headset. Holy, he never finished. He didn't have to. Every man in the bomber saw it with his own eyes. One tail gunner had just broken up the largest fighter assault they'd ever faced. But Donovan knew the truth. He hadn't won. He'd bought time. Maybe 90 seconds. Maybe less. And the Germans would be angry now. He checked his belts. 180 rounds left. The Germans regrouped faster than anyone expected. 90 seconds later, they came in a blind, furious swarm. 12 fighters dove on Hell's Fury from 6 o'clock with no formation and no hesitation. Just raw firepower. Donovan didn't panic. He didn't pick the closest fighters. He didn't aim for the ones already firing. He shot at the psychological center of the pack, the aircraft whose position held the group's courage together. He fired 30-round bursts into 3 different fighters. All 3 took hits. One erupted into flame. 2 peeled away trailing smoke. 9 fighters kept coming, now within 400 yards. 20mm cannon fire ripped the air apart around Hell's Fury. The bomber shook as metal tore and bolts screamed. But Donovan kept firing. Target. Burst. Target. Burst. No fear. No hesitation. Just precision. Another BF-109 disintegrated. Then another. 5 left. 200 yards. Point-blank range. Donovan could see the pilots' faces now. Young men. Focused. Determined. He fired anyway. 2 more fighters vanished in fire. 3 remained. 100 yards. Too close for comfort. Risk of collision now greater than the kill. They broke off. Donovan swung his guns. Found 1 more fighter. Squeeze a trigger. Nothing. Click. The guns were empty. He had spent every round. 180 shots in 45 seconds. 6 fighters destroyed in that engagement alone. And now he had nothing left. I'm out, Donovan said. Tail guns dry. Copy, Whitmore replied. Damage report. Anyone hit? One by one the crew checked in. The ball turret had taken a glancing hit. The rudder showed stress fractures. But every man was alive, and the bomber was still in the air. Hell's Fury could fly, but she could no longer defend her tail. The Germans knew it. They regrouped for one final strike. 27 aircraft still airborne. They had lost 21 fighters to a single gun position. The cost was staggering. But now they had one clear advantage. The tail was silent. They approached from 6 o'clock low. The one angle Donovan could no longer contest. Tight formation, slow, deliberate. This wasn't an attack. This was execution. Donovan watched them come in. 400 yards. 300. 200. He had no ammunition. No firepower. No way to fight back. But he had one last weapon. Fear. He tracked the lead fighter with dead guns. Smooth. Calm. Perfect aim. As if his guns were still loaded. As if he could open fire at any moment. The German pilot saw the barrels locked on his cockpit. He flinched. Reflex overrode logic. He snapped into a hard right brake. A split-second instinctive move. And the formation followed him. Not because Donovan could kill them, but because they believed he could. His reputation had become its own weapon. Empty guns now carried the same threat as loaded ones. They're breaking off, the ball turret gunner said, stunned. They're actually breaking off. And it was true. The 27 remaining fighters scattered and did not return. They had lost too much already. No target was worth this. Hell's Fury flew on alone across Germany. They reached Augsburg, dropped their bombs, destroyed the aircraft factory, then limped home through 3 more fighter contacts. Not a single enemy pilot dared attack them. Word had already spread across German radio frequencies. 1 B-17, 1 tail gunner, 21 fighters destroyed. And every pilot in the region understood the message. The order spread through German radio channels like a warning siren. Avoid that aircraft. Too dangerous. Too costly. Hell's Fury touched down at Framlingham at 16:47 hours, 9 hours after takeoff. When the engines wound down, the crew climbed out stiff, tired, and stunned that they were still alive. Donovan crawled out of the tail position last. His hands were calm. No tremor. No shock. Just quiet focus. Ground crews rushed the bomber. They counted every scar. 47 bullet holes. 13 cannon strikes. A ruined hydraulic line. A cracked rudder. The damage looked like the aircraft should have dropped out of the sky hours earlier. But it held together, and it brought its crew home. Chief Mechanic Murphy inspected the tail guns and opened the ammo boxes. Every tray was empty. Donovan had fired every round they'd loaded for the mission. He walked outside and found Donovan sitting on the concrete, smoking a cigarette like he'd finished a long shift, not a life-or-death fight. "You used everything," Murphy said. 2,000 rounds. Not one left. "Had to," Donovan answered quietly. Didn't have enough to waste any. "How many did he get?" Whitmore asked. Murphy checked the numbers. Crew witness accounts. Radio intercepts. Visual confirmations from escort fighters that finally caught up near the target. 12 confirmed, Murphy said. 4 probables. 3 damaged. Whitmore studied Donovan for a long moment. "You destroyed 12 fighters in one mission. 19 if you count the others," Murphy added. "And he did it in 4 minutes of direct combat." The story moved faster than any official report. By sunset, every tail gunner on base was asking how Donovan pulled it off. By the next morning, pilots from neighboring groups were requesting briefings. That afternoon, representatives from 8th Air Force headquarters arrived for interviews. By evening, Major General Frederick Anderson himself walked into the enlisted barracks. He found Donovan cleaning his weapons, focused, methodical, treating the guns the same way he had before the mission. Anderson introduced himself. Donovan snapped to attention. "At ease," the general said. "I'm here for one reason. I want to understand what you did yesterday." Donovan explained his approach. Not luck, not recklessness. A clear philosophy. Attack early. Hit them before their formation hardened. Use intimidation the way a fighter pilot used positioning. Force them to react. Break their confidence. Turn their coordination into chaos. He talked about the moment when fighters are still settling into their attack pattern, when they're most focused, most predictable, and most vulnerable. That was the moment he targeted. It wasn't just gunnery. It was timing, psychology, pressure. Anderson listened without interruption. When Donovan finished, the general asked a single question. "Can you teach this to the right men?" "Not everyone." Donovan said honestly, "You need gunners who think like they're flying a fighter, not hiding behind armor. Men who see an opening, not a threat. Men who'd rather push forward than fall back." "Find them," Anderson said. "I'm authorizing a new program. You'll design it, recruit for it, and build a new doctrine for our tail gunners. Starting now, you're reassigned to training command." Donovan hesitated. "Sir, I'd rather stay with my crew." "Your crew doesn't need you anymore," Anderson replied. "They're alive because of you. But other crews are dying because their gunners don't know what you know. The choice is simple. 9 men or 9,000. The answer wasn't hard. Donovan accepted. Over the next month, he developed what would be called the Donovan Doctrine. 5 core principles that would redefine bomber defense. First, seize the initiative. Don't wait for the enemy's attack. Disrupt it while it's forming. Second, use psychology. A single burst placed well could break the enemy's coordination before the real fight even started. Third, concentrate fire. When outnumbered, don't spread your attention thin. Hit the sector that matters most, and trust the crew around you to cover the rest. Fourth, conserve ammunition through aggression. A quick, decisive strike that forces fighters to scatter saves more ammo and more lives than long defensive bursts against scattered targets. Fifth, accept the risk. Defensive shooters died at high rates. Aggressive shooters took bigger risks but saved more aircraft. The mission mattered more than the man. The doctrine was controversial. Some called it dangerous. Others said it would burn through ammunition too quickly. Traditional instructors dismissed it outright. But the numbers told a different story. In March 1944, before Donovan's approach took hold, tail gunner casualties in the 8th Air Force averaged 38%. By June, after his method spread, the rate fell to 23%. Same aircraft, same enemy, different tactics. The shift didn't just save gunners. It disrupted the enemy's entire attack strategy. In March, German fighters completed more than half of their attack runs. By June, that number had dropped to 27%. Aggressive gunnery was breaking up attacks before they even began. Radio intercepts told the rest of the story. German pilots started avoiding bombers with known aggressive gunners. Even the rumor of a Donovan-trained crew was enough to shift German plans. Between March and August 1944, Donovan trained 300 gunners, 2 weeks each. Live fire, simulated attacks, psychological drills. Not everyone passed. About a third washed out. Some couldn't shake defensive habits. Some couldn't push themselves into controlled aggression. But the ones who made it through became some of the deadliest tail gunners in the war. By the end of the conflict, graduates of Donovan's program accounted for nearly half of all tail gun kills in the European theater. One of them, Sergeant Thomas Bailey, destroyed 16 fighters in his first 4 missions. And it all started with one gunner on Hell's Fury, who refused to wait for an attack that was already coming. Another gunner, Sergeant Robert Chun, completed 27 missions without a single serious hit to his position. His survival wasn't luck. It was a direct result of the aggressive doctrine. It didn't only increase kill counts. It changed behavior. It convinced the enemy that certain bombers were simply too dangerous to approach. German pilots learned to recognize these crews almost instantly. The signs were always the same. Early opening fire at distances most gunners wouldn't even try. Long, sustained streams of bullets instead of the usual controlled bursts. Tracers cutting to the heart of their formation before their attack plan even locked in. When German pilots saw these patterns, they understood the message. Stay away. The cost of engaging this kind of gunner was higher than the reward. By the summer of 1944, even Luftwaffe training manuals included warnings about American aggressive gunnery. The recommended countermeasure was simple. Avoid those bombers. Go after softer targets. The psychological balance had flipped. What began as a desperate method to survive had grown into a tactic that made the enemy second-guess their own courage. Donovan never flew another combat mission after March 6. His final fight became his legacy. The rest of the war he spent training others, shaping how an entire branch of the military thought about bomber defense. His personal tally was impressive, but the ripple effect of his methods changed the air war. Conservative estimates credit the Donovan Doctrine with saving 300 American bombers and more than 3,000 crew members. Every mission that made it home because German fighters broke off early was part of that impact. After the war, historians studied what Donovan had created. His concept of aggressive defense became part of aerial doctrine around the world. The Soviet Union integrated it. Britain taught it. Even German analysts, reviewing their own losses after the war, acknowledged how effective it had been. The idea spread far beyond tail gunners. Fighter escorts used it. Ground attack pilots used it. Naval aviators adopted it. Anywhere a defensive gun position existed, Donovan's principles applied. As for Donovan himself, he went home to Boston, worked construction, and built a quiet life. He rarely talked about the war. When reporters tried to interview him in the 1960s, he declined. "I did what needed to be done," he said. 300 other gunners did the same. They're the story. But the men he trained disagreed. Sergeant Bailey, one of the best graduates of the program, explained it best in a 1972 interview. "Before Mike, we thought survival meant hiding, staying small, saving ammo. He taught us that survival means making the enemy fear you. Sounds simple, but it changes everything." The data backed him up. In 1945, the 8th Air Force ran a full analysis comparing bomber losses before and after the aggressive doctrine took hold. From March through May, the average loss rate was 14 bombers per 1,000 sorties. From June through August, it dropped to 8. Same targets, same enemy, a 43% decrease. The difference came down to one factor: crews who fired first. Captured German records revealed the other side of the story. After-action reports from summer 1944 mentioned the new American tactics again and again. One report dated June 1944 described it clearly. American tail gunners now engaged during the approach phase with sustained fire. Effective psychological disruption of attack coordination. Recommendation: avoid direct attacks from the stern. Use steep diving approaches from 11 or 1 o'clock. That recommendation wasn't easy to execute. Those attacks required different training, different timing, and far higher risk. Many German pilots couldn't adjust. And those who tried ran into another problem. American waist gunners were now using the same aggressive principles. Donovan's doctrine had spread through every gun position on the bomber. By August 1944, German fighter effectiveness against American bombers had dropped 63% from January levels. Many factors contributed: better escorts, better formations, the bombing of German fuel supplies. But internal Luftwaffe studies credited more than a quarter of that decline directly to aggressive American gunners. Donovan never knew any of these details. He never saw the analysis. He never learned how far his ideas traveled. He passed away in 1998 at 76. His obituary in the Boston Globe mentioned his Distinguished Service Cross, his 16 years in construction, his wife Margaret, and his 3 children. One short paragraph covered his wartime service. It didn't include the 12 kills in 4 minutes. It didn't mention the 300 gunners he trained. It didn't talk about the thousands who survived because of him. It didn't say he changed how every major air force on Earth approached defensive gunnery. His funeral was small. 17 people, mostly family. 2 friends from the war. No honor guard. No rifle salute. Just a quiet service in St. Augustine Cemetery. The priest didn't know anything about March 6, 1944. He didn't know he was burying a man whose decisions had saved thousands. But the other gunners knew. The night before the funeral, several of Donovan's trainees gathered at a small bar in South Boston. They shared drinks and stories. They talked about the man who taught them to shoot first. They talked about the lives that weren't lost because of him. Bailey, now 74, raised his glass. Mike never thought he was special, he said. Just a working-class guy doing his job. But his job saved 3,000 of us. Every bomber that made it home because German fighters backed off. Every gunner who survived because he learned to be aggressive instead of afraid. Every mission that succeeded because the enemy didn't dare push in. That's Mike's legacy. Not 12 kills. 12,000 lives. His doctrine is still taught today. Not just to defensive gunners, but to fighter pilots, transport crews, and even operators of modern missile defense systems. The idea is the same. Engage early. Break coordination. Make your opponent hesitate before the real fight begins. March 6, 1944 lasted 4 minutes. 1 gunner. 12 enemy fighters. A moment when defense turned into offense. When waiting turned into acting. When a tough kid from South Boston showed the world that the surest way to survive is to make the enemy afraid to face you. Michael Donovan fired 2,000 rounds, destroyed 12 enemy aircraft, saved thousands of lives, and changed the future of aerial warfare. Not because he believed he was a hero, but because he refused to sit still and wait for death to find him. He chose to go after it first. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Thanks for helping keep these stories alive.